Okay, today on the podcast, I'm joined by Chris Fusco. He's the executive editor of the Sacramento Bee in Sacramento, California, and he's been in a bunch of really cool newsrooms actually over the years. Houston Chronicle, Lookout Local, Chicago Sun-Times, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, Chris, thanks. Good to see you again. Thanks for joining me. Appreciate it.
Paul, thank you. Thank you for having me. I hope I can sound half as intelligent as all the other people you have on this podcast. You've had an
Uh,
impressive career
well,
come
thank
through.
you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And there's some sharp cookies in the local media space. It's why I love. I always joke when I started this podcast. I wasn't a journalist. I didn't have many contacts in the space. I was like, maybe I can get like a 10 episode season. And now 2 years later, it's just like I have such a list of people, interesting people coming on.
What
So
number are you on now?
75, I think, was the one that came out the other day, and I've got
Wow.
6 or 7 recorded, ready to go out, and then this one, so you'll be number 80 something probably. So
Well, there you go.
yeah, it just
Well,
keeps rolling. It's fun.
that number of people shows the demise of local news has been greatly exaggerated, right?
Agreed. Yes, I
I
love it.
can think of 85 more people who you should have on this thing.
That's
So
that's literally what's happened. Is people and then people come on and oh, you should talk to so and so and so and so also. So
yes,
it's fun. Okay, well, I kind of like to always set the stage by just asking the guest to just tell me about your background. You know, you told me one on one last week, but just tell us about your background and your career and just a little bit
sure.
about that.
Try to give you the abridged version. I am native South Side Chicagoan. South Side Chicagoans will take umbrage with that because I actually grew up in a suburb called Alsip, and I could see the Chicago city limit from my house. But I also went to high school in Chicago, and basically just kind of fell in love with the business working for my college newspaper. We had a little weekly newspaper at Illinois Wesleyan, didn't really have a journalism major, but had a journalism sequence, and just kind of got to make a lot of mistakes there and learn from them. And was lucky enough to just fall into a really good track with the Pulliam Fellowship in Indianapolis, and then moving on, kind of running the gauntlet into the Sun Times. Worked for the Northwest Herald, the Daily Herald, covering the suburbs, going to night meetings. Get to the Sun Times. Was lucky enough to kind of cover state government as the Chicago State Government Agency reporter during the Rod Blagojevich era. So got to really learn how to do investigative reporting, covering Governor Blagojevich. His administration became its own investigative beat. But all the while, I was doing some relief editing. You know, the Sun Times was a great place because we were the underdog, and we were always figuring out creative ways to get the job done. So I was part of a pool of reporters that was also doing relief editing. Worked Saturday nights, 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. for 3 years, and eventually got back into the management side of it full time in 2016. Have been on a journey ever since, rose the ranks to become EE of the Sun Times. Once my wife decided to take her buyout from the Chicago Tribune and we found ourselves empty nesters, began this adventure out to California. I was very fortunate to be part of the Lookout Local startup environment. Spent nearly a year there before taking a little pandemic break and reapplying for other jobs, and ending up in Houston with Hearst at the Houston Chronicle for nearly 2 years as managing editor, and then scratching the California itch again, and coming back out to California to be editor of Press Democrat News Group. And then, when the McClatchy opportunity opened up, it was just too good of an opportunity to pass up.
Right.
So found myself in my current spot. I've been at the Bee since September 22nd.
Could you talk a little? I'm sure a lot of folks listening to this are familiar with the Bee, with the Sacramento Bee, but could you talk a little bit about the organization? How old? You told me on our last call how old it was, and it was kind of a
Yes.
shocking number, but I don't remember exactly. Yeah,
So the Bee on February 3rd will be 169 years
that's
old.
crazy.
We have been doing it since 1857. I'm actually in the process right now of trying to line up something called the Sacramento Bee Roadshow
Hmm.
to sort of go to any community group, chamber of commerce, school group, university group willing to hear us out, and talk about the history of the Bee, sort of where we've been, the headwinds we're facing now, acknowledging those, and sort of where we're going. So, but It's a pretty amazing history when you go back and look at, James McClatchy coming over here during the gold rush and working for a bunch of different papers and then being a founding editor of the Bee, and then sort of the family's path to acquiring it and building it into this big national company. While the family's no longer affiliated with the company, I think the work we do here every day is important, and we're trying to honor that legacy because it's a really, it's
So the actual McClatchy from McClatchy, it all started with the Sacramento Bee. I was not aware of that.
yeah,
From the
yeah, the
sounds of it,
Bee
that's cool. It's just kind of like the flagship kind of
The
original one,
the
huh?
Bee is the flagship. Don't tell that to the people in Miami. They might have an argument with you, or the people in Kansas City. But no, the Bee is the original, and the broadcast empire emanated from here. Funny, quick 30-second Sacramento Bee story.
Yeah, yeah.
The Bee itself, our mascot is Scoopy, and Scoopy was actually drawn by none other than a Chicago guy, Walt Disney.
Oh wow.
Um, Eleanor McClatchy asked Disney during World War II to try to come up with some branding for us, and he agreed if a sum of $1,500 was donated to the Army Relief Fund. And that transaction ended up happening, and Scoopy became property of the McClatchy Company, potentially now to Disney's chagrin.
Right.
But anyhow, we won't talk any more about that. But Scoopy is ours, and the Disney connection is a really cool
Wow,
little
that is
story.
cool. That's why I love
Yeah,
getting all these calls too. I never would have. Maybe I would have fallen down a deep Wikipedia rabbit hole some night and found that out or something. But okay. So you were talking about your background. You spent most of your career life in Chicago, then California, Texas, California again. A lot of people I have on kind of operate in the same region for a lot of their career. And, our country is so huge. It's like almost, it's like the size of Europe. It's like a lot of different countries, really. I was curious if you have any thoughts or observations on reporting locally for a local publication in different kind of types of communities. Like Houston, all of California, Chicago are very different places in my mind. Does that
yeah.
make sense? Yeah.
It's been a crazy journey, and I mean, Chicago, knowing it so well, I still have I think a pretty good GPS brain for Chicago. I don't need to turn on punch in any directions. It's a grid. I know where I'm going. I learned the politics of it in the
Hmm.
course of 25 years between the suburbs and the city there. And the thing about Chicago that I still love is just the competitive fire that burns. And while it used to be, I think when I was coming up through the industry, Tribune, Sun-Times, Daily Herald, other suburban pubs, it's now evolved into, Sun-Times, Tribune, Black Club Chicago. There's something like 99 news organizations in
Yeah.
Chicago now. So it's just a cool media ecosystem, and one in which competition really drives excellence.
Hmm.
Back during the Blagojevich days and sort of pre-internet proliferation, you would dread waking up in the morning to see if the Tribune had a story on the front page that you didn't have. And then if they did, you had to figure out how to one up it, right? Well, at the end of the day, that competition made us so much better, made everybody better, and it really has created a legacy there. Moving out and doing things in Santa Cruz, which is like a market, a fraction of the size of Chicago. Chicago, a market of 9.5, 9.6 million. Santa
Right.
Cruz, 256,000. But what was cool about the Lookout experiment is we found cool stories there too. I mean, and cool by, really solid investigative work. We did a story sort of about this high school grooming teacher principal
Hmm.
scandal in this high school district in the Santa Cruz Mountains. We were following all kinds of spending on homelessness services programs. There was just there was a school superintendent let go in South County, and it ended up being this whole saga in which she eventually got her job back. So
Hmm.
what that lesson taught me is that there's cool stories everywhere, no matter what the market size, and there needs to be people there to tell those stories. Moving into Houston, Houston was like its own country. I mean, the
Right.
city alone is something like 640 square miles. It was
That's
just nuts.
crazy.
So
Yeah.
we were always trying to deal with the challenges of breaking news and how do you cover breaking news? Whereas one comedian put it, Houston is literally 1 hour from Houston, right? And and that didn't include the counties outside of Harris County that were frankly politically much different than Houston itself. So it was cool learning that dynamic. It was interesting to have to help manage the newsroom and other newsrooms statewide through the Uvalde school shooting. Just one of the tragedies that jumps out at me over the course of my 30 plus years doing it, and our approach on that and how we were competing with everybody in the world on that story.
Mhm.
And then coming back out to California, and seeing sort of the Press Democrat and Press Democrat news organization being a throwback. The PD was one of those places where we had people calling the newsroom all the time. I just saw a tornado. One time, an F-16 fighter jet buzzed a neighborhood coming out of an air show, and the switchboard lit up. It reminded me of kind of being at the Sun-Times when I was working, on the desk, taking phone calls from people. And it's great to see. And frankly, we need to kind of go back to the future on that, right? We need to forge that relationship, those two-way conversations a bit more that we lost during COVID. And it's a challenge that I'm trying to tackle now at the Bee.
Yeah, that's great stuff. It's funny you mentioned that horrible the Uvalde shooting, and how you said you were competing with everybody in the world. It's funny. I just was on a interview this morning with a guy, and he was at the Denver Post during Columbine. He's from New Jersey, so he was on the ground for that, and then he went back home to Jersey right before 9/11, and they were across the river from it. So he saw like these two things, and he was just talking about. I was asked him similar question of being on the ground there versus all the national and international press parachuting in and everything like that. Anyway, that's just one takeaway I had from what you were kind of saying there. Um,
Yeah, and look, stories, to me, what I loved about being a journalist is just the front row seat you could have to anything on a given day. Getting to be in an editorial board session with Barack Obama. In '97, I somehow found myself in the Bulls locker room when they uh
that's
when they
cool.
won when they won their fifth championship. And we get a front row seat to history. And it for me, that part of it has been great. And then you remember having to knock on parents' doors of kids who, die in car wrecks tragically.
Yeah,
And the emotional roller coaster it takes you on is something I try not to forget, because there's a lot of people outside, my office right now who have to deal with that on a day in, day
mm-hmm,
out basis.
mm-hmm.
So
Right.
it's been a ride.
That's yeah. Man, this podcast just gets funner and funner talking to hearing these stories is great. Back to the Bee a bit, and you at the Bee. I don't think I put this in the prep. Sorry, but we talked about it on the first call. What did you? I'm not a journalist. What did you call the first 90 as a executive editor? Was it first 90, first 100? Something along those lines? Your first kind of set
Oh,
of
the 100
time?
days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So with the past two jobs I've had, both at the Press Democrat and here at the Bee, I've kind of taken an approach of, be a fly on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Don't walk in the first day saying we need to do this, 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 and
Right.
this. The approach is come in, observe how the news meeting structure works, talk to every staff member, which I did in both places. I've got notebooks full of information from them, get the staff's ideas about what we think we're doing well and what we think we're not, and then try to synthesize it. Here it's resulted, I think, of hopefully sound strategy that we can take into 2026. Generally speaking, I think newsrooms still haven't recovered structurally from COVID. I think we all saw a lot of success during COVID because we became essential. People relied on us like they never have in a really long time to figure out how to navigate their daily lives. And once COVID ended, some of those digital subscriptions that we had built up went away
Right.
because people had used us for what they needed and couldn't really see the value beyond that. So we need to do a little bit of back to the future in a different way. And I can tell you as much or as little as you want to hear about what that means for the bee. But don't want to hijack your questions.
No, no, no. That's actually that's what I was going to dive into next. Like, how do you like what is your kind of your vision? And then you kind of talked about coming in as an outsider to that newsroom or whatever, and so that's great stuff too. But how do you think about coming into like a such a historic newsroom like the Bee, and what are your thoughts for moving forward with that context of what you were saying, coming out of COVID, and sustainability
Yeah.
is an important thing too. So yeah.
So the bee is really almost like two newsrooms in one, right? We've got this kind of really strong, robust Capitol Bureau presence headed up by our assistant managing editor, Grace Weiler, who reports to Scott Labar, who is a 40-year veteran of the Bee. So I can't tell you how great it is to be walking in, being the new guy, and having somebody in the office next to you who's been covering this region for 40 years, which is just awesome. So, the challenge I think for us is to maintain that robust capital presence and grow it in the face of stiff competition from Cal Matters, a not-for-profit news juggernaut, in the face of stiff competition from Politico. The LA Times is increasing its presence in the Capitol, which is great. So we are really working hard to maintain what we've built, being frankly, the state's watchdog with our Capitol team, but then also now sort of rebuilding our presence as a metro news organization.
Hmm.
So we are creating a new team, repurposing editing roles into reporting roles, and getting some help from our corporate folks at McClatchy to create what I'm calling a local accountability team. And it is going to be doing largely the same things I was doing 30 years ago, getting out in communities, hitting the pavement, talking to people, going to night meetings, looking at agendas, whether they're school board or city council, and but telling those stories in a way that's modern, right? So we'll have a reporter up in Roseville and Placer County. We'll have a reporter in Folsom, sort of East Sacramento corridor out to El Dorado County. We'll have a reporter in Elk Grove and Rancho Cordova, which are two of the biggest communities in our region. And that reporter will also cover the Elk Grove school system, which is among the state's top 10 largest school systems, even bigger than Sac Unified. And then we will have a reporter in Yolo County focused primarily on Davis and Woodland. Davis is sort of a news ecosystem unto itself with UC Davis and all the cool stuff that's happening out there. So, it's a little bit, let's hit some singles again, but beyond that strategy, we know we've got to recommunicate to our market that we're doing this again.
Hmm.
And that's the challenge, hence sort of the idea behind the Sacramento Bee Roadshow, and also formulating two new, and reviving one defunct and beefing up one newsroom called Be Connected. So we're calling these Be Connected newsletters, BEE. Too many bee puns to come up with here at Sacramento Bee.
I
But
love puns, very punny.
yes, yes. But basically, so we're not only going to be out there doing the journalism, we're going to be out there trying to tell communities what we're all about face to face. And we will be delivering news starting weekly in these local newsletters with the hopes of formulating hyper local alert systems through a new McClatchy app and over email down the road. So this is a big lift for us, but I'm betting the farm that if we show these communities that we are back, they will support us. And it's hopefully I got this untracked a little bit in the Sonoma and Napa County newsrooms I headed before coming to Bee, and we were seeing success there. I don't think there's any reason we can't have even greater success here in the Sacramento region.
Yeah, that's a great overall plan. I've had a couple folks on. It's always like a unique challenge when you're in like a capital city like that, where there's
Yep.
also you're also the state capital. I've had some other folks on. I actually just had one of your direct competitors on recently, Kristen Go from Cal Matters,
I listened to Kristen.
and a few others in some state capitals. And it is like, I like the way you phrase it. It's almost like two different newsrooms or multiple different newsrooms trying to cover all that stuff. Could you talk, once again, didn't have this in the prep, but I got curious when you were talking about it, but the hyperlocal newsletters, just what do those look like? How big of, I've been really interested in hyperlocal stuff lately on the podcast. Is it like how big of a neighborhood would one serve? You don't have to talk too much about them. I'm just
Yeah,
curious what they look like.
and maybe, hyper local is relative.
Yeah, right.
For us, we're kind of looking at these regions. I describe it to the newsroom as like B Nation, right? So you've got Placer County, which is this huge territory, but for us, the B Nation capital of Placer County is Roseville and environs. As part of the team, we're also going to have a regional watchdog reporter who is kind of designed to be our lead person, gobbling up payrolls and lawsuits and data and crime stats and contracts and looking at campaign contributions. So our watchdog reporters in, say, Roseville, Placer announced that we're hiring Nicole Buss, who has been covering that area for Gold Country Media. She's going to be focused primarily on Roseville and surrounding communities. And then Teresa Clift, who is our regional watchdog, will be kind of looking broader throughout the region. So, in the eastern part of the nation, the capital city is going to be Folsom with El Dorado Hills next door, and then Grove to the south with Rancho adjacent to that, and then Davis kind of being the capital city of Yolo County. We want to really focus, and what's the reason behind that? We looked at our subscriber roles and we looked at how subscribers are engaging with us, and that is where we see sort of the most opportunities.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you for unprompted going into that a little more. I was just curious.
No worries.
So my obligatory AI question, and I'm almost getting tired of asking this because it comes up on every podcast for everything ever, but it is also like the biggest shift in technology in a long time. So I like hearing what other people in different seats at different organizations in different part of the country are thinking about it. So it's kind of a broad question, but just what are your kind of overall thoughts on AI? That could mean a lot of different things, but also, are you guys using any tools or anything in your workflows or anything like that?
Yeah, look, at McClatchy Media, we are embracing AI, and this isn't just the B, it's all 30 McClatchy news brands. We are embracing AI as a tool to make all the good journalism that we do with human hands, mouths, feet, shoe leather reporting. We're using it to enhance it and make that journalism better. I will give you one example. We just did a super cool investigation. Two of our reporters went through dozens of campaign records, campaign committees, well over 100, in the wake of a political consultant who was a former chief of staff to Gavin Newsom getting indicted. And the reporters set out and they basically found that there are a ton of campaign committees and ballot proposal committees, and California government is crazy. Everything gets on the ballot. So there's all kinds of fundraising committees surrounded behind ballot questions, and basically found that a sizable number of our elected officials are raising money under the guise of these causes, yet never spending it on those causes. They leave office or they stay in office and they end up spending this money. The lead on the story was a lawmaker who used money from one of these funds to take supporters and himself to the Super Bowl.
Fun.
Great story,
Fun.
right?
Yeah.
So, story that also is multiple thousands of words, and we know might not be read start to finish by everybody. So what do? We have a process, and we experimented. This was our first time with this process where we put that story into AI, and it's already out there on the street. But we just took our story and asked the AI bot, one of our local engagement folks, I had them do this. Give us 5 takeaways from the story. Give us 3 takeaways. Give us 2 takeaways. Give us 10 takeaways, right? And that resulted in us spitting out 5 key points that producer could then take back to the reporter. She looked at them and said, okay, I'm going to modify this one, this one, this one, and this one, throw a top on it. Allows us to recirculate that story in a digested sort of way,
Mhm.
and ran that story about a week after we ran the initial one, and saw tremendous engagement numbers,
Hmm.
not only from the general public, but from our subscribers. So what does that exercise tell us? It tells us, number one, that not everybody wants to read investigative reporting the same way. right? Number two, it shows us though that everybody has an appetite for reading it. But the most important takeaway for me is by using AI to analyze our own work and spitting out sentences to us, back to us that we wrote, but consolidating them away, it saves us time. Tony Hunter, who is our CEO, has a expression that I think is pretty salient for all of journalism's day. Time is our enemy. Speed is our friend. Our for-profit journalism model is contingent upon us producing as much content as possible, being everything to everybody, and being able to tell big stories in different ways. And if AI is a tool that can help us doing that, we're very comfortable with that here at McClatchy Media.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think, you know, if it's helping you be more efficient, if it's factually accurate, I don't hear anybody just letting the chatbot post things out to the public or anything, and it is actually serving the community. Like, it's kind of a no-brainer to me. You know what I mean? To be able to be
Yeah.
using it like that. Yeah.
And the key to it is, and we post AI disclaimers that whenever we're
Hmm.
doing things like this, we also use AI for takeaways at tops of stories. The key is be transparent with the public about what you're doing, and make sure that you're not just putting something out there that isn't fact check.
Yeah.
You need to edit and fact check whatever AI spits out at us, whether it's copy or whether it's an analysis of a spreadsheet, right? Or whether it's a great tool, Eric Galicia in our Fresno operation, besides the Bee, I oversee the other four McClatchy newsrooms in California. He built a tremendous tool that helps flag when agricultural land is being sold. And the Fresno folks are using that. And down in Central Valley, that's a huge help to us to have AI scanning those records rather
Hmm.
than having to have a human body looking at that on a daily or weekly basis.
Right. Yeah. The term I've heard thrown around a lot, and apologies to any listeners. I think I've said this on like 4 straight podcasts, is like an AI sandwich. Meaning like the human is the bread, and the AI does a lot of stuff in the middle. Human does input, does a lot of the busy work, helps speed things up, and then obviously a human like fact checks and make sure it's actually doing the job it's supposed to be doing. But yeah,
I will be sure to steal that from you, Paul.
go for it. You could probably use
Uh,
a more slightly better. I was calling it the human sandwich for a while, but I'm like, that didn't sound as good. I don't know, as AI
Yeah,
sandwich.
and in the same breath, I don't wanna leave anybody with the impression that AI is going to replace us. I mean, I know
Hmm.
I'll jump forward. You always ask the 5 years from now
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
I mean, a little tease to what's to come there. AI is not going to replace us. It can do certain things that can help us. But to me, if news organizations, and it's one of the things I'm really excited about at McClatchy, it's like, all right, well, how do we take it now and then repurpose existing resources to do more and better journalism because AI can do certain things
Right.
that we used to have to expend human capital on, right?
Right.
So if news organizations enter into it with that mindset, at the end of the day, it's going to be good for the news consumer and it's going to be good for human journalists because if we're successful using this, that yields more readers, more subscribers, more revenue, which if all of our hearts are in the right place, and I think they are, that's going to mean more jobs.
Yep. I totally agree. Yeah, that was my next question. Any other thoughts on that? I would say, flash forward 5 years, where do you see the industry? Where do you see yourself? But I mean, that's definitely covers it on AI. Any other trends popping up you see anywhere? I mean, the industry's been in decline if you look at some statistics for years. I don't think that's the full story, but
No,
you have any other
but
predictions along those lines? Yeah.
no. Well, look, as for me personally, I've had too many jobs over the past 5 years, so I'd like to be right here. So that answers that one for me. But as far as like where the industry's at, well, look, you talked about Kristen Go earlier, and I've been thinking about this a lot because I thought she did a great job articulating the Cal Matters vision on your podcast. If we're all doing our jobs well, it's a more informed public that frankly creates room for all of us, right? And I know, look, there's a lot of talk about, well, how do we all cooperate and how do let's set that aside. If we're all doing our jobs well, there's room for everybody. And we need to lean on technology and hopefully it will come along. When you look at the things that the New York Times is doing with its app and the way it can customize it in real time, if
Mhm.
we can start to incorporate some of those tools into our toolbox, and I realize that's difficult, technology
Yeah.
is crazy, but if we can start to get that technological side a little bit better and be able to figure out how to target information to certain segments. I was just talking about this with Samantha Sullivan, our California engagement and retention editor this morning. Not everybody in Folsom on the far east side of our market needs to know what's happening in Davis on the far west side of our market.
Mhm.
So if there's a way we can develop news products that tells them the things they both need to know, that's great. But if we can also just tell them, Davis folks, you just need to know about this because it's specific to your neighborhood, that's better. While we've done our vehicle to do that right now has primarily been email newsletters. We know that's not going to be there for us in the way it has been because now everybody's email inbox is sort of like their regular mailbox, right?
Right.
Everybody's getting a lot of junk email. That said, we're trying to train people as to how to make us your best sender and all those kinds of things, right? But so we just need to keep innovating and looking for things. And if we do that, I actually think 5 years down the road, there may be some solutions for us that we just can't see now, Paul.
Right.
But at the core of them is going to be able to deliver information that people need directly to them that is relevant to them and in a way that sort of drowns out the noise. I think the other part of the question, it does have to do with a lot of people always ask, well, is the Sacramento Bee to the right, to the left? Where does it stand on Trump? And, set all that aside. When I was a emerging journalist in Chicago, I would go to night meetings at city councils. And I'll play this game with you. How many reporters do you think were at a village board meeting in suburban Lake in the Hills covering it at night?
I don't know. Yourself? I have no idea. Enlighten me. 3,
Five.
4? Okay, okay. There we go.
There were five journalists in the room. That's how stiff the competition
That's
was.
crazy. I just a little yeah.
So five of us are sitting in that room, all working for different news organizations. And I can guarantee you, if there was a bar down the block that was making a lot of noise, or if the water wasn't coming out of people's taps right, that village board meeting would be flooded with people from that community. And they did not care who voted for a Democrat or who voted for a Republican for president. All they cared about was that the problem got solved. Local journalism unites people. And we need to get back to that mode of saying, here are problems and solutions in local communities rather than here's how people are using their political persuasion to advance somebody's agenda. So if we stick to what's at our core, that's going to help bring us a long way. That doesn't mean that covering state and federal politics isn't extremely important to our
Right.
future as an industry, and especially at the Sacramento Bee. But it's that second part of it that I think we've sort of lost in the way the business has evolved, and I think we're all smart enough to start going back there.
That's great. That's one of the best answers I've had to that question overall. I totally agree with all that. You couldn't have said it better. Chris, I do have to go in just a minute. I feel like we could talk quite a bit longer about this, but
For sure.
could you tell people where people can find you, what I should link to and all that all that?
Sure. Absolutely. Sacb.com. If you are local and aren't as familiar with our organization in Northern California, I would really encourage you to go to sacb.com/newsletters and sign up and get as many of our newsletters as possible. We plan on debuting our new Be Connecteds in the region here in February, at the end of February at the latest, where we're still working on spinning those up. And if anybody wants to reach out to me directly, they can always do so at cfusco@sacb.com.
Awesome. Chris, I'll link to all that stuff. Once again, thanks so much for being here. Come your open invitation to come back on if you ever want to talk about
All
some more of this
right, all right.
stuff.
Well, maybe we do it. Maybe we see how we're doing on our local accountability strategy a year from
Yeah,
now.
there we go. All right, cool.
Be a good before and after. And I'm still being here, Paul,
Of
for the
course,
record.
of course. I know you will be. You already answered the 5-year question. We'll be
There
there.
you go.
All right,
So,
have a good weekend.
thank you.
Okay, if you could just hang on.